800 years ago, a scholar named Jalal ad-Din Rumi met a wild, wandering mystic, and his entire world caught fire. He went from a man of books to a man of the soul, spinning in ecstatic dance, pouring out poetry that still sells more copies today than the pop stars of our time. Why? Because we are starving. We are drowning in information, but starving for wisdom. And Rumi, he knew exactly where the food was hidden. We spend all day looking at screens, at other people, at the horizon. We travel everywhere, but the one place that actually counts. It's scary to look inward, isn't it? But Rumi, he doesn't let us off the hook. He grabs us by the shoulders and asks, "And you? When will you begin that long journey into yourself?" It's the hardest trip you'll ever take. No tickets, no luggage, just you and the messy, dark parts of your soul you try to hide. We distract ourselves with noise because silence is terrifying, but that's where the gold is. You can't find the answers out there in the world. They aren't in a job or a relationship or a bank account. They're buried under layers of who you pretend to be. You have to start walking inward, even if your feet are heavy, especially then. And once you start walking, he warns you about the biggest trap of all: comfort. We love safety. We build fences around our lives and call it success. But a safe life is often a dead life, a cage with velvet bars. Rumi shouts at us to tear it all down. Run from what's comfortable. Forget safety. Live where you fear to live. Destroy your reputation. Be notorious. I have tried prudent planning long enough. From now on, I'll be mad. I'll be mad. That's the secret. Sanity is just following the rules everyone else made up. It's boring. It's stagnant. To really live, you have to be willing to look like a fool. You have to risk looking crazy to everyone who's asleep. Stop planning every single step. Stop worrying about what the neighbors think or what your resume looks like. Go to the edge of the cliff where your knees shake. That fear, that's your compass. Follow it. But here's the thing about following that fear. It's going to hurt. We run from pain like it's a disease. We think a broken heart is a sign of failure. But what if the breaking isn't the end, but the beginning? Rumi whispers this hard truth. You have to keep breaking your heart until it opens. Think about a walnut. You can't get to the nourishment inside unless the shell cracks. Your ego, your defenses, they are that hard shell. Pain is the hammer. It shatters the armor you built to protect yourself. It hurts. God, it hurts. But a closed heart can't feel love, and it can't feel God. Every time it breaks, it expands. It gets bigger. So don't glue it back together. Let it stay open. Let the world in. It's hard to see it that way when you're in the middle of the suffering, though. When life hits us hard, we play the victim. We scream, "Why me? Why is this happening?" It feels personal, like a punishment. But Rumi asks us to shift our perspective entirely. When someone beats a rug, the blows are not against the rug, but against the dust in it. You aren't being punished. You're being cleaned. All those heavy blows, the loss, the failure, the rejection, they are knocking the dirt out of your soul. The dust of arrogance, of attachment, of greed. The rug feels the stick and thinks it's being destroyed, but the person holding the stick sees the beauty underneath the grime. Life hits you to reveal your true colors. Trust the hand that holds the stick. So if the dust is gone, what's left? Light, but only if you let it in. The universe is full of grace. It's literally everywhere, pouring down on us every second. But most of us are sitting in the dark, wondering where the sun went. Rumi points to the architecture of our own minds. Moonlight floods the whole sky from horizon to horizon. How much it can fill your room depends on its windows. The problem isn't the light. The source is infinite. The problem is how small your window is. Is it covered in grime? Is it shuttered tight with cynicism and doubt? You control the aperture. You can't blame the moon if your room is dark. You have to get up and throw the shutters open. Vulnerability is the window. Gratitude is the window. Open them up and let the flood come in. And sometimes the only way to get a window is for something to punch a hole through the wall. We are back to pain again, but this is the core of it. We try to hide our scars. We cover our wounds. But Rumi tells us those damaged places are actually sacred ground. The wound is the place where the light enters you. This might be his most famous line for a reason. It flips the script on trauma. The broken place is the entry point. It's where the ego finally gives up and lets something greater take over. Without the wound, you remain whole but impenetrable, sealed off. The crack is the only way the divine can get inside. Don't hide your pain. Don't be ashamed of it. That's your portal. That's your grace. Knowing this doesn't make the day-to-day annoyances vanish, does it? It's easy to be spiritual on a mountaintop. It's hard when your boss is yelling or you're stuck in traffic. We get annoyed, we snap. But Rumi challenges us to look at friction differently. If you are irritated by every rub, how will your mirror be polished? In his time, mirrors were made of metal. They had to be scrubbed hard with sand to shine. If the metal complained about the friction, it would stay dull. It would never reflect anything. The difficult people in your life, they are the sand. The bad days, that's the polishing cloth. If you run away every time it gets uncomfortable, you'll never shine. You have to stay in the fire to get clean. All this breaking, polishing, and running, where does it actually lead? It sounds exhausting, but it's not about forcing anything. It's not about struggle. It's about surrender to a force that knows you better than you know yourself. Rumi leaves us with this gentle promise. Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray. There is a magnet in your chest, a strange pull. Maybe it's art, maybe it's service, maybe it's a person. Whatever it is, it's not random. It's the universe calling you home. Stop resisting it with logic. It's quiet though, silently drawn. You have to shut up to hear it. But if you trust it, if you just let go and float in that current, you'll end up exactly where you're meant to be. Trust the pull. "2,500 years ago, a prince walked away from a kingdom of gold. He saw sickness, old age, and death, and he realized he couldn't just look away. He needed to understand the root of it all. Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, didn't just teach us history or religion. He taught us the anatomy of suffering. His wisdom isn't just ancient philosophy. It is the manual for being human. And in a world that is louder and more chaotic than ever, his voice is the quiet truth we desperately need to hear. We spend our days running on a treadmill, chasing this vague idea of a good life, complicating everything with conditions. We think we need more to be happy, but before this next quote, consider that maybe we actually need less. A man asked Gautama Buddha, "I want happiness." Buddha said, "First remove I. That's ego. Then remove want. That's desire. See, now you are left with only happiness." The formula is shockingly simple. The I is the heavy part, the ego that thinks it's the center of the universe, constantly needing validation and defense. It's a massive burden we carry around, thinking the world owes us something, and that weight alone crushes any chance of real joy. Then there's the want, the endless gnawing hunger. As soon as you get what you want, you just want something else. It's a trap. But when you drop the ego and drop the craving, you realize happiness wasn't something you had to go out and get. It was already there, buried under all the junk. But dropping that junk is hard because, let's be honest, our heads are usually a messy, noisy place. It feels like a war zone up there sometimes. Buddha spoke directly to this internal chaos when he said, "There is nothing so disobedient as an undisciplined mind, and there is nothing so obedient as a disciplined mind." Think about the last time you tried to focus or stay calm, and your brain just dragged you into anxiety or anger against your will. An untrained mind is like a wild animal in your house. It breaks things, it keeps you up at night, it refuses to listen. It's dangerous. But train it, tame it, suddenly it's your greatest ally. It works for you, not against you. A disciplined mind doesn't jump at every shadow. It stays still, it obeys your command for peace. It's the ultimate superpower in a distracted world. And when that mind is racing, we tend to grab onto our struggles and squeeze them tight, obsessing over every detail. We feel the need to fix everything right now. But there is a gentler approach, and Buddha suggests that most problems, if you give them enough time and space, will eventually wear themselves out. We act like we have to perform surgery on every single issue in our lives immediately. We pick at the scabs, never letting them heal. We overanalyze, over-strategize, and usually we just make the knot tighter by pulling on it. Sometimes the best action is actually no action, just stepping back, letting the storm pass. Most things in life are temporary. They run out of energy if you stop feeding them with your worry. Time is a solvent. It dissolves what feels solid and permanent. But some problems involve other people, and they spark a deep, burning anger inside us. We feel justified in our rage. We want payback. Yet Buddha offers a hard, eternal truth about the cycle of violence. Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal rule. It feels intuitive to hit back, to hurt those who hurt us, but that just spins the wheel of suffering faster. You throw fire at fire, and all you get is a bigger inferno that burns you down too. Breaking the cycle requires something radical. It requires stopping the momentum. It's not about being weak, it's about being strong enough to absorb the hit and return kindness. That's the only water that can put out the flames of hate. Why is it so hard to see that? Because our reality is shaped entirely by the lens we look through. We forget that we are the ones holding the camera. Buddha reminds us of the sheer power of our own perception. The mind is everything. What you think, you become. Your life isn't defined by what happens to you, but by the story you tell yourself about what happens. If you dwell on failure, you become failure. If you dwell on victimhood, you remain a victim. The narrative is the blueprint. This is scary, but also liberating. It means you're the architect. You can change the structure of your life just by changing the architecture of your thoughts. You are literally thinking your future into existence, second by second. So this connects directly to that feeling of joy we started with. We look for it in cars, houses, relationships, but we're looking in the wrong place. As Buddha points out, happiness does not depend on what you have or who you are. It solely relies on what you think. You've seen rich people who are miserable and poor people who are radiating light. The external stuff is just set dressing. It doesn't touch the core. You can be in paradise, but if your mind is in hell, you are in hell. It's an inside job. It's about the quality of your attention, not the quantity of your possessions. Once you realize happiness is a perspective, not a destination, you stop waiting for tomorrow to be happy. You can choose it right now. But you can't choose it if you aren't in charge. We often feel like passengers in our own bodies, driven by impulses we didn't choose. Buddha gives us a stark warning here. Rule your mind, or it will rule you. There is no middle ground. Either you are the master, or you are the slave. If you don't take the steering wheel, your fear, your laziness, and your insecurities will drive you off a cliff. It requires constant vigilance. You have to stand guard at the door of your thoughts. Every day is a battle for control, and winning that battle is the only way to be truly free. Otherwise, you're just a puppet to your own biology. And finally, no matter how much we try to fool ourselves or others, Reality has a way of surfacing. We can pretend, but we can't hide. Buddha leaves us with this beautiful reminder. 3 things cannot hide for long: the moon, the sun, and the truth. We exhaust ourselves wearing masks. We bury our secrets, we hide our true nature, and the effort it takes to keep those lies in the dark drains our soul. But it's futile. The nature of things is to be seen. Just as the sun rises without fail, the truth always breaks through the clouds eventually. There is peace in accepting this. Live transparently. Live honestly. Because in the end, nothing is hidden anyway. Imagine a man born in chains, literally, a slave in the hierarchical machine of the Roman Empire. He had a broken leg, no money, and absolutely no power. Yet the most powerful men in the world, emperors, generals, the elite, they sat at his feet to learn how to live. His name was Epictetus, and the secret he carried wasn't about changing the world outside. It was about building a fortress inside, making yourself bulletproof to whatever the world throws at you. Epictetus challenges us to look at our struggles differently, specifically when he talks about the great legend Hercules. He asks, what would have become of Hercules, do you think, if there had been no lion, hydra, stag, or boar, and no savage criminals to rid the world of? What would he have done in the absence of such challenges? Obviously, he would have just rolled over in bed and gone back to sleep. So by snoring his life away in luxury and comfort, he never would have developed into the mighty Hercules. It's a terrifying thought, isn't it? That if Hercules had been given the safe, easy life we all pray for, he wouldn't be a legend. He'd just be a guy, sleeping, wasting away. We tend to think the monsters in our lives, the heartbreak, the financial ruin, the failures, are obstacles standing in the way of our life. But Epictetus is telling us they are the life. Without the heavy weight, there is no strength. Without the resistance, there is no muscle. So look at your own lions and hydras. Stop wishing them away. If you remove the struggle, you remove the hero. You aren't suffering because the universe hates you. You're struggling because you're being forged, like steel. The fire burns, yeah. It hurts, but it's the only way to become something that doesn't break. The comfort you want, it's a cage. The struggle you hate, that's the door. There was a man standing in front of an execution squad, moments away from death. The soldiers raise their rifles, he takes his last breath, and then, at the very last second, he is spared. That man was Fyodor Dostoevsky. He lived through the darkest parts of the human experience: mock execution, years in a Siberian labor camp, poverty, and epilepsy. But he didn't break. Instead, he came back with a map of the human soul. He matters because he doesn't just write about life. He writes about your life, your darkest thoughts, and the light that's hidden underneath them. As Dostoevsky himself put it, pain and suffering are always inevitable for a large intelligence and a deep heart. Think about that for a second. He's saying your pain isn't a mistake and it's not a failure. It's actually a marker of your capacity to feel. If you have a deep heart, you are going to hurt deeply. It's a package deal. You cannot have the mountain peaks without the valleys, and you cannot have profound understanding without profound struggle. So when you are suffering, don't hate yourself for it. It just means you are paying attention. It means your spiritual machinery is working exactly as it should. The truly great men and women of history, they didn't dodge the pain. They embraced it as proof of their humanity. It is a heavy burden, sure, but it is a noble one to carry. But we cannot stay in that darkness forever, or it will consume us completely. We need a way out, a way to breathe again when the world gets too cynical and the weight becomes too much. We need something pure to wash away the grime of adult life, and Dostoevsky knew exactly where to find that purity. There is a beautiful sentiment where Dostoevsky reminds us, the soul is healed by being with children. Have you ever really watched a child play? They don't worry about yesterday's mistakes or tomorrow's bills. They are completely here, right now. Their innocence isn't ignorance, it is clarity. They remind us of who we were before the world told us who we were supposed to be. And yet, even with that healing, most of us remain stuck in patterns we don't understand. We walk around thinking we are free, making our own choices, living our own lives. But the scariest trap isn't the one with iron bars. It is the one you build inside your own head without even realizing it. Dostoevsky gives us a terrifying warning when he says, "The best way to keep a prisoner from escaping is to make sure he never knows he's in prison." Realizing you are in a prison is the first step to breaking out of it. It is painful to wake up and see the bars, but it is necessary. Once you see the walls, the self-doubt, the need for approval, you can finally start chipping away at them. That uncomfortable awareness is the only way to ever be truly free. "2,000 years ago, a man stood at the very center of the world. He had everything: power, money, the ear of the emperor. But he also had a target on his back. This is Seneca, a Stoic who didn't just preach in a classroom. He lived through tyranny, exile, and eventually a forced suicide. Why does he matter? Because he figured out how to stay sane in an insane world. And honestly, I think we need that now more than ever. We try to logic our way out of heartbreak. We tell ourselves to get over it because it doesn't make sense to be sad anymore. But Seneca knew the limits of the human mind when he said, "Only time can heal what reason cannot." See, logic is fast. Emotions are slow. You can understand exactly why something happened and still feel the wound burning in your chest. That's the disconnect. Your brain knows the truth, but your heart hasn't caught up yet. So you have to wait. You have to let the days do the work that your thoughts can't. It's not about giving up. It's about surrendering to the clock. Healing isn't a race. It's a season. And sometimes you just have to endure the winter until the spring comes back. But it's not just our emotions we struggle with. It's our ambitions too, especially this desperate hunger for more. We chase the promotion, the new car, the bigger house, thinking, if I just get there, I'll be safe, I'll be happy. Seneca shakes his head at this illusion when he writes, "For many men, the acquisition of wealth does not end their troubles. It only changes them." You think money is the exit strategy, but it's really just a scene change. You trade the stress of not having enough for the terror of losing what you have. The fear changes masks, but it's the same fear underneath. It's a heavy realization. You're climbing a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall. We fixate on the external stuff, hoping it'll fix the internal stuff. It never does. The trouble isn't in your bank account, it's in your soul. And while we are busy chasing that money, we are losing something far more valuable. Think about how tight you hold on to your wallet. You lock your door, you check your balance. But Seneca noticed a strange contradiction in human nature. He said, people are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which they have a right to be stingy. We give our time away for free, to people we don't like, to scroll loops that numb us, to arguments that don't matter. You'd never hand a stranger $1,000, but you'll hand them an hour of your life without blinking. But you can make more money. You can never make more time. Once today is gone, it is dead. It's never coming back. We treat time like it's infinite, like there's always a later, but there isn't. Now, when you actually start protecting your time and doing the work, things get hard, and we hate that. We want the easy path, the shortcut. We think struggle is a sign that something is wrong, but Seneca flips the script on us completely. He reminds us, difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. The gym hurts, your muscles tear, you sweat, but that resistance is the only way you get stronger. Life is the exact same way. If you never carry a heavy load, your spirit stays weak, you stay fragile. So when the world pushes against you, don't wish for it to stop. Push back. That friction isn't there to destroy you, it's there to build you. The obstacle is the way forward. And really, it's not about how long you keep pushing, it's about how you do it. We obsess over the number, the age, how many years we get on this earth. But Seneca looks at the quality, not the quantity, saying, as is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters. A long book can be boring. A short story can change your life. It doesn't matter if you live to be 100 if you spent 90 of those years sleepwalking, just existing. It's about the impact, the depth. Did you love? Did you risk? Did you actually show up for your own life? A short life that burns bright is better than a long life that just flickers in the dark. But in that short life, we have to be careful what we chase, especially when it feels good. We live in a world of instant gratification. One more click, one more drink, one more buy. But Seneca warns us about the trap of excess when he says, pleasures, when they go beyond a certain limit, are but punishments. The first bite of cake is heaven. The 10th bite makes you sick. It's the law of diminishing returns. When you indulge too much, the thing that used to bring you joy starts to bring you pain. It becomes a chain. You become a slave to your own wants. Real freedom isn't doing whatever you want whenever you want. Real freedom is self-control. It's knowing when to stop before the pleasure turns into poison. Friedrich Nietzsche. You've seen the face, the stern look, that heavy mustache, but look past the image. He wasn't just a philosopher. He was like a stick of dynamite for the human soul. He saw through our polite lies and stared directly into the darkness we try to hide. He went mad trying to understand what it means to truly live. And his words? They aren't just ideas. They're warnings. If you listen, really listen, they might just wake you up. We obsess over passion, thinking that sparks are enough to sustain a lifetime. But the fire always dies down, and then you're left looking at a stranger. Nietzsche saw the crack in that foundation when he said, "It is not a lack of love, but a lack of friendship that makes unhappy marriages." See, romance is volatile. It comes and goes like the weather. But friendship? That's the solid ground beneath your feet. When the excitement fades, you don't need a lover who just fascinates you. You need a partner who actually understands you. And that's the tragedy of so many relationships. We look for someone to complete a fantasy, rather than someone to share the boring, heavy reality of living. Nietzsche is telling us that the only thing that survives the long haul isn't the heat of the moment, but the cool, steady hand of a friend. Now, think about your worst days, the moments that felt like they were ripping you apart. Nietzsche doesn't want you to pity yourself. He wants you to use it. As he famously put it, that which does not kill us makes us stronger. He's not offering a cliche here. He's talking about spiritual alchemy. When life tries to crush you and you refuse to break, you don't just stay the same. You harden. You evolve. The scar tissue is tougher than the skin it replaced. It means your trauma isn't a life sentence. It's fuel. Every time you survive a storm, you walk out of it with a kind of armor that the sheltered people of the world will never have. You build yourself out of the wreckage. But there is a danger in fighting your demons too closely. You start to learn their moves, and eventually you start to think like them. Nietzsche warns us about this dark reflection, saying, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster." It's a terrifying thought. You spend so much time hating something, fighting against cruelty or injustice, that you let that hatred consume you. You adopt the very weapons you despised. You become bitter, rigid, and cold, just like the enemy you set out to destroy. So you have to guard your soul. While you're down there in the mud wrestling with the beast, don't forget to look up. Don't let the darkness you're fighting seep into your own heart, or else your love remains even if you kill it. And why do we struggle so much to see these things about ourselves? It's because the lie is always more comfortable than the reality. Nietzsche cuts right to the bone of our denial, noting that sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. We build these little castles of glass around our lives. We tell ourselves we're happy, that we're good, that we're on the right path. The truth feels like a stone thrown through that glass. It shatters the safety we've built, and that is terrifying. But living in an illusion is like being asleep. Sure, the dream is nice, but it isn't real. Nietzsche is challenging us to step on the broken glass, to accept the pain of the truth, because that is the only place where real life actually happens. Now, let's talk about endurance. How do people survive the most impossible, horrific situations without giving up? It's never about the circumstances. It's about the meaning behind them. Nietzsche says, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." If you know what you're fighting for, it anchors you to this earth. Without that why, even a small struggle feels unbearable. We collapse under feather-light burdens when they feel pointless. But give a man a purpose, and he can walk through hell and come out the other side without flinching. But finding that purpose requires you to be flexible. You have to be willing to change your mind, to let go of who you used to be. Nietzsche uses nature to explain this perfectly. The snake which cannot cast its skin has to die. As well the minds which are prevented from changing their opinions. They cease to be mind. Think about how many people you know who haven't had a new thought in 10 years. They're stuck. They cling to their old opinions like a life raft, but really it's an anchor. If you aren't changing, you aren't growing. You're just rotting. To really be alive, you have to be willing to shed your own identity. You have to look at what you believed yesterday and be brave enough to say, "I was wrong." That is the only way your mind stays alive. Everything else is just stagnation. And yet, it's so hard to think for yourself when everyone else is shouting the same thing. We like to think we are rational, but put us in a crowd, and we lose our heads. As Nietzsche observed, in individuals, insanity is rare, but in groups, parties, nations, and epochs, it is the rule. When you're alone, you have to face your own thoughts, but in a group, you can outsource your conscience. You get swept up in the hysteria of the mob, the party, or the movement. You stop thinking and start chanting. It's a warning against the comfort of the herd. History is full of madness that looked like sanity because everyone was doing it. Nietzsche is begging us to step away from the crowd and reclaim our own individual sanity, no matter how lonely that feels. This brings us to a fundamental divide in humanity. There's a split between those who seek comfort and those who seek reality. Nietzsche categorizes us simply, saying, there are two different types of people in the world, those who want to know and those who want to believe. If you want peace of mind, happiness, and security, then believe. Belief is safe, it's warm. But if you want to know, if you want the truth, you have to be ready to sacrifice that peace. Knowing is dangerous. It's often cold and indifferent. Most people choose belief because the void is too scary to look at. They want the fairy tale. But the knower, the seeker, they choose the difficult path. They would rather be unsettled by the truth than comforted by a lie. So if we choose to know, what do we find? We find that life is difficult. It hurts. But that isn't the end of the story. Nietzsche offers a path through the pain. To live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. Pain is the universal constant. You can't outrun it. Rich, poor, wise, foolish, we all bleed. But the difference between a victim and a survivor is meaning. You have to look at your suffering and decide what it's for. Maybe your struggle teaches you empathy. Maybe it drives you to create art. If your pain is just random, it destroys you. But if you can wrap a purpose around it, suddenly it becomes something you can carry. It becomes part of your story. And if you're going to suffer, you might as well aim for something massive. Why play it safe when the end is the same anyway? Nietzsche pushes us toward the extreme, declaring, "I know of no better life purpose than to perish in attempting the great and the impossible." We're all going to die. That's the guarantee. So why waste your life trying to preserve it in bubble wrap? Use it up. Burn it out in the pursuit of something higher, something bigger than yourself. It's better to fail at something magnificent than to succeed at something mediocre. Throw yourself at the impossible wall. Even if you crash, the crash itself is a triumph. It's a life fully spent, not just hoarded. Now, when you do create something great or do something meaningful, step back. Don't ruin it with your ego. Nietzsche advises us on the art of silence. The author must keep his mouth shut when his work starts to speak. There's a time to push and a time to let go. Once you've put your truth out into the world, your job is done. Explaining it, defending it, talking over it, that just cheapens it. It shows you're insecure. Let your actions stand on their own legs. If what you've done has value, it doesn't need your commentary. Silence is confident. It forces the world to deal with what you've created, rather than dealing with you. This leads to perhaps his most beautiful concept. How do we deal with the regrets, the mistakes, the past we can't change? We don't just tolerate it. Nietzsche says, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it. All idealism is mendaciousness in the face of what is necessary, but love it. Amor fati, love your fate, not just the good parts, but the messy, painful, ugly parts too. Don't wish it was different. Don't hide from it. Embrace the chaos of your life as if you chose it yourself. It's the ultimate acceptance. It's saying yes to the universe. When you can look at your worst tragedy and say, this belongs to me, and I love it because it made me who I am, that is when you become untouchable. But don't think this level of acceptance comes easily. It's usually the deepest souls who pay the highest price. Nietzsche recognizes this cost, stating, "The most spiritual human beings, assuming they are the most courageous, also experience by far the most painful tragedies." It makes sense, doesn't it? If you have a deep capacity for love, you have a deep capacity for grief. If you are brave enough to climb the highest peaks, you risk the longest falls. The shallow person is safe, but they are numb. So if your life feels heavy, if you face tragedy, take it as a sign of your depth. It means you're living with your eyes open. You aren't hiding. You are experiencing the full, crushing weight of the human condition, and there is a terrible beauty in that. To handle that weight, you need discipline. You need to be your own master. Nietzsche gives us a strict rule for survival. He who cannot obey himself will be commanded. That is the nature of living creatures. Look around. Most people are looking for a leader, a guru, a system to tell them what to do. Why? Because they can't control themselves. And if you can't govern your own impulses, someone else will gladly put a leash on you. Freedom isn't doing whatever you want. Freedom is self-control. If you don't have the will to command your own life, you are destined to be a servant to someone else's will. That is the harsh law of nature. Finally, what separates the truly great from the rest? It isn't wealth or status. It's how they face the dark. Nietzsche leaves us with this distinction. The higher man is distinguished from the lower by his fearlessness and his readiness to challenge misfortune. The lower man hides. He prays for an easy life. He runs from difficulty. But the higher man, he stares right back at the storm. He doesn't ask for the burden to be lighter, he asks for his back to be broader. It's about walking into the unknown without trembling. It's about meeting your bad luck with a grin, knowing that whatever happens, you have the strength to handle it. That is what it means to be truly free. We think we know him, the painter, the inventor, the old man with the long beard staring out from history books. But strip away the masterpieces, strip away the Mona Lisa, and you find a man who was obsessively, painfully awake while the rest of the world was sleepwalking. He didn't just observe the world, he dissected it to find the truth about us. And 500 years later, those truths still sting, because we've forgotten how to simply be. We live in a world that is addicted to noise, where everyone is shouting just to be noticed. We mistake volume for power, thinking that if we are loud, we are strong. But Leonardo da Vinci understood the geometry of human nature better than anyone, and he offered this correction. Nothing strengthens authority so much as silence.
Think about that. We usually rush to fill the quiet because it makes us uncomfortable, but the truly powerful, they wait. Silence is a mirror. When you stay quiet, you force the other person to project their own insecurities, their own fears onto you. You don't have to win the argument, you just have to watch them lose it. And it's about control. The moment you over-explain yourself, you give away your power, you dilute your truth. But when you hold back, when you keep your cards close to your chest, you become unpredictable. You become heavy. In a room full of people screaming for attention, the one who stays silent is the only one anyone is actually watching. But there is a trap here, because being silent doesn't mean being still. There is a terrifying difference between rest and rot, and most of us don't see it until it's too late. We stop moving, we stop trying, thinking we are preserving our energy. But Leonardo da Vinci looked at nature and saw the danger. He warned us. Iron rusts from disuse, stagnant water loses its purity, and in cold weather becomes frozen. Even so does inaction sap the vigors of the mind. You felt this, that sluggishness on a Sunday afternoon that somehow turns into a wasted month. It's not just boredom, it is corrosion. Your mind is a machine, a complex engine, and if you don't run it, the gears seize up. The sharp edges get dull. You think you are resting, but you are actually decaying. We treat our brains like storage lockers, trying to keep them safe, but they are meant to burn fuel. Depression, anxiety, that feeling of being stuck, so often it is just rust. It is the energy you refuse to use turning against you. You have to move. You have to grind the iron, or it will crumble in your hands. So, if we need to keep the machine running, what is the fuel? We spend so much of our lives afraid of losing our money, our looks, our status. But there is one investment that is completely immune to the ravages of time. It is a beautiful sentiment from Leonardo da Vinci. Learning is the only thing the mind never exhausts, never fears, and never regrets. Everything else fades. Love can break your heart, markets crash, your body will eventually betray you. But this is yours. You can be stripped naked and cast into the middle of a desert, and they still cannot take what you have understood. It is the only possession that is truly safe. It is also the only hunger that doesn't hurt. It's the only pursuit that doesn't leave you empty when you finally catch it. When you are old, when the world feels dark, when you are in pain, learning is the sanctuary. It is the only act of defiance we have against the inevitability of death. But be careful. You cannot just read about life and call it living. We want the shortcuts. We want the wisdom without the scars, the lesson without the pain. But Leonardo da Vinci knew that the truth isn't found in a library. It's found in the mud.
He reminds us simply that wisdom is the daughter of experience. You can't read your way to wisdom. You have to bleed for it. We try so hard to protect ourselves from bad days, from heartbreak, from mistakes. But those are the raw materials. A child knows fire is hot because he touched it, not because he was told. Thousands of years ago, a man named Lao Tzu looked at the world, at the chaos, the ambition, the noise, and he decided he'd had enough. He walked away into the mountains. But before he vanished, he left us a map, a way to navigate the mess of being human. Why does a ghost from ancient China matter today? Because we are more lost than ever. We're drowning in information, but starving for wisdom. And the old master, he knew the way out. Lao Tzu warned us about our mental trap when he said, "Be careful what you water your dreams with. Water them with worry and fear, and you will produce weeds that choke the life from your dream. Water them with optimism and solutions, and you will cultivate success. Always be on the lookout for ways to turn a problem into an opportunity for success. Always be on the lookout for ways to nurture your dream." Think of your mind like soil. It doesn't care what you plant. It just grows whatever you feed it. If you feed it fear, you get a forest of anxiety. You get paralyzed. It's not the world stopping you, it's you. You're nurturing the very things that are killing your spirit. But flip the script. Feed it solutions, even small ones. Suddenly, the problem isn't a wall, it's a door. It's about attention. Where does your attention go? That's what grows. You have to be the gardener of your own mind, ruthless with the weeds, or they will take over everything. But it's not just about what we think, it's about when we think. We are rarely here, right now. We're ghosts, haunting our own history or stressing about a future that hasn't happened yet. As Lao Tzu put it, if you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are living in the future. If you are at peace, you are living in the present. The past is heavy. It's dead weight. Carrying it around, replaying your mistakes, the heartbreak, it's a recipe for misery. You can't change it. You can only let it crush you. Depression often comes from staring at a door that already closed 10 years ago. And the future, it's a phantom. Anxiety is just suffering twice, once in your imagination and maybe once in reality, usually just the imagination. Peace is right here, in this breath. The only place life actually happens is the one place we refuse to be. So if we find that peace, how do we protect it, especially when the world tries to provoke us? It's easy to snap. Someone cuts you off, someone insults you. You feel that heat rise up. You want to fight back. But listen to what Lao Tzu says about true strength. The best fighter is never angry. Anger feels like power, right? It feels like fuel, but it's not. It's a leak. When you're angry, you're blind. You react instead of responding. You give your control away to the person who made you mad. You are dancing to their tune. A real fighter, a master, they stay cold. They stay clear. They don't fight out of emotion. They fight out of necessity. If you can keep your head when everyone else is losing theirs, you've already won. The moment you get angry, you've lost the strategic advantage. Yet, even the calmest life falls apart sometimes. Things end. We're terrified of change. Losing a job, a breakup, it feels like the world is ending, like the ground is opening up beneath us. In those dark moments, remember Lao Tzu's wisdom. New beginnings are often disguised as painful endings. We cling to the old because it's safe. Even if it hurts, it's familiar. But the universe works in cycles. Winter has to happen for spring to come back. Something has to die for something else to be born.
It's the law of nature. That pain you feel, it's not punishment. It's preparation. It's clearing the space. You might not see it now through the grief, but the empty space left behind is exactly where your new life is going to fit. You have to trust the void.
And as we build that new life, we have to rethink what power really looks like. We think power is loud, aggressive, the one beating their chest. But that's insecurity. That's fear wearing a mask. Lao Tzu describes the true warrior differently. A skillful soldier is not violent. An able fighter does not rage. A mighty conqueror does not give battle. A great commander is a humble man. Violence is the last resort of the incompetent. If you have to destroy everything to win, what have you actually won? Nothing. You rule over ashes. True power doesn't need to prove itself with noise. Think about water. It's soft, but it cuts through rock. Humility isn't weakness, it's flexibility. The humble commander listens. They adapt. They win without fighting because they don't create enemies in the first place. They conquer by not contending. But there is a danger in trying too hard, in pushing yourself to the absolute limit. We live in a hustle culture. Grind, grind, grind. Maximize everything. Push until you break. Lao Tzu leaves us with this final warning. An over-sharpened sword cannot last long. You want to be sharp, sure, but grind a blade too thin and the edge becomes brittle. It snaps the moment it hits something hard. Perfectionism, obsession, it makes you fragile, it makes you weak. You have to know when to stop, when to rest. Sustained effort beats a manic burst every time. Keep your edge, but keep your substance. Don't grind yourself down to nothing just to look sharp for a moment. Lasting long is better than burning bright and fading out. We usually think of him as just a name on a dusty book spine, the guy who wrote novels that are too heavy to carry, let alone read. But Leo Tolstoy was so much more than that. He was a soul on fire, a man who had everything, wealth, fame, genius, and almost threw it all away because he couldn't find the point of it all. He didn't just write about life, he wrestled with it. His wisdom isn't just pretty words, it's the wreckage of a man who spent his whole life fighting for the truth. We tell young men to be tough, to build empires, to harden their hearts against the world. They end up thinking strength means being alone and unfeeling. But there was a different kind of advice from Leo Tolstoy, who said, "Nothing is so necessary for a young man as the company of intelligent women." It's weird advice, isn't it? You expect him to say, work hard or conquer your enemies. But he knew that raw masculinity, left unchecked, destroys itself. It becomes rigid. The intelligence of a woman, that emotional depth, that nuance, it's the water that shapes the stone. Without it, a man is just a blunt instrument, swinging blindly in the dark. You see, it's really about balance. A young man thinks he knows everything because he can overpower things, but he doesn't understand people. Being around that feminine wisdom forces him to slow down, to listen. It teaches him that true strength isn't just about force, it's about understanding. And that is the only way a boy actually becomes a man. Now, there is another hard truth from Tolstoy that cuts through our modern noise. We look around to see what everyone else is doing, and if they're all doing it, we assume it must be okay. It feels safe to hide inside the herd. But that is a dangerous lie. And Leo Tolstoy warned us about this when he said, "Wrong does not cease to be wrong because the majority share in it." Just look at history. Look at the things we used to applaud that now make us sick. The crowd is almost always wrong because the crowd moves by fear, not by conscience. Truth doesn't need a vote. It stands there, alone, quiet, waiting for you to notice it. Even if you are the only one seeing it, the truth remains the truth. It's terrifying to stand alone. It really is.
but integrity is the price of your soul. You can't outsource your morality to the mob. When you realize that numbers don't equal righteousness, you stop looking for permission. You start looking for what's right. And that is a lonely but absolutely necessary path to walk.
But perhaps the most difficult place to apply this wisdom is in our relationships. We chase this fairy tale of the soulmate, the person who is exactly like us and completes our sentences. But eventually, the puzzle pieces stop fitting and we panic. Leo Tolstoy hit the nail on the head when he wrote, "What counts in making a happy marriage is not so much how compatible you are, but how you deal with incompatibility." We give up too soon. The moment there's friction, we think we made a mistake. But the friction is the point. Real love isn't two people looking at each other and agreeing. It's two people seeing the mess in the other person and staying anyway. It's easy to love someone who is just like you. That's just loving yourself. But to love someone who drives you crazy, that's where the character is built. It's about the bridge you build over the gap. That gap between your way and their way, that's where the marriage actually lives. It's not about finding perfection. It's about forgiving imperfection over and over again.
We often think of him as just the hair, the tongue, the equations on a chalkboard, the man who broke physics. But Albert Einstein was more than just a brain. He was a soul who looked at the stars and somehow saw our own reflection looking back. His wisdom wasn't just about relativity or gravity. It was about the human condition, about how to survive in a world that rarely makes sense. He saw through the noise. And if we stop running for a moment and listen, really listen, we might just find a way to navigate our own chaos. We look at the vastness of space and feel small, yet we walk around with egos that fill the room. It's a strange, tragic paradox, our arrogance. Albert Einstein captured this irony perfectly when he said, "Two things are infinite, the universe and human stupidity, and I'm not sure about the universe." It sounds harsh, doesn't it? But look around. We repeat the same mistakes, century after century. Wars and greed, expecting different results. We build walls instead of bridges. It's a loop we can't seem to break. A vast ocean of bad decisions that rivals the cosmos itself in scale. It makes you wonder if we ever really learn. But there's a quiet challenge hidden in those words. It's a call to prove him wrong, to step out of that infinite stupidity and do something sensible, just for once. To look at the universe not just as a place we occupy, but as a standard of harmony we need to try and live up to. And then we have to talk about how we perceive reality itself. We obsess over facts, figures, and data points, thinking that if we just know enough, we'll be safe. But Einstein offered a different perspective. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. You see, knowledge is just a box. It's everything we know right now, everything that's already been done, already been solved. It's static, it's safe, but it's a cage. If you only rely on what you know, you never move forward. You just spin in circles.
Imagination, though, that's the key to the door. It's the ability to see what isn't there yet, to dream up a better version of yourself or a better world. It's the limitless horizon. While knowledge keeps you grounded in the past, imagination pulls you into the future. Now consider how we communicate these big ideas. We hide behind big words and jargon because we're afraid of looking simple. Einstein saw right through that pretense when he noted, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. We think complexity looks like intelligence. We layer on confusion to hide the fact that we're lost. But true mastery, true understanding, it's simple, it's pure. If you can't strip an idea down to its bare bones,
it means you're still tangling with the fluff. It's about honesty, really. Being able to explain something simply requires you to drop the ego. You have to stop trying to impress people and start trying to connect with them. That is where real wisdom lives, not in the lecture hall, but in the clarity of a child's understanding. Speaking of children, we worry so much about their future success, drilling them with logic and math. We forget the fuel that actually drives the mind. Einstein advised us, if you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. If you want them to be more intelligent, read them more fairy tales. Logic can get you from A to B. It's functional, but it's dry. A mind without magic is like an engine without oil. It grinds to a halt. Fairy tales teach us that dragons can be beaten. They teach us that the impossible is just a waiting game. When you feed a mind with wonder, you're building the architecture for innovation. You aren't just teaching a child how to count, you're teaching them how to dream. And in a world that is becoming increasingly automated, the dreamers are the ones who will survive. But dreaming isn't enough. You have to keep going. We all face those moments where the ground falls out from under us, and we want to just stop. Einstein compared this struggle to a simple childhood pastime. Life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you must keep moving. Stagnation is the enemy. The moment you stop, the moment you let the fear freeze you, that's when you fall over. Gravity takes over. The wobbles only get worse when you slow down. It's the momentum that saves you. It doesn't matter if you're moving slow. It doesn't matter if the road is uphill and your legs are burning. As long as you are pedaling, you are safe. You are balanced. It's a reminder that action, no matter how small, is the only cure for fear. Now, think about how we treat our own memories. We treat our brains like storage lockers, cramming them with phone numbers and dates. But Einstein had a different rule for his own mind. Never memorize something that you can look up. Why waste the precious energy of your mind on storage? We are not hard drives. We are processors. We are meant to think, to analyze, to create. Filling your head with trivia isn't intelligence. It's just clutter. It's about freeing up space for what actually matters. If it's written down somewhere, leave it there. Keep your mind clear for the problems that don't have answers yet. Keep your mind clear for the thoughts that are actually yours. And when it comes to those problems, we often praise the people who can fix disasters. We call them heroes. But Einstein made a subtle distinction. A clever person solves a problem. A wise person avoids it. The clever person is reactive. They wait for the fire to start, and then they rush in with the hose. It looks impressive. It feels like work, but it's exhausting, and often it's too late. The damage is already done. The wise person? You don't even notice them. They looked down the road, saw the smoke, and changed course miles ago. They don't get the applause because there was no disaster to fix, but they are the ones who live in peace. This leads us to the very definition of what it means to be smart. We usually think it's about IQ scores or degrees, but Einstein defined it differently. The measure of intelligence is the ability to change. The dinosaurs were strong, but they couldn't change. The world is a river. It is constantly shifting, turning, eroding. If you stand still, if you are rigid like a stone, the water will eventually wear you down or wash you away. To change is to survive. It means admitting you are wrong. It means letting go of the old way because it doesn't work anymore. That is hard. It hurts the ego. But that flexibility, that is the only true strength we have. So how do we cope with the difficulty of all this change? We usually turn inward, focusing on our own misery. Einstein suggested a counterintuitive approach. The best way to cheer yourself is to cheer somebody else up. We get trapped in our own heads. We ruminate. We stew in our own problems until they feel like mountains. But the moment you step out of your own shadow to help someone else, your perspective shifts. It's not just moral advice, it's practical. When you lift someone else, you are reminding yourself that you have power.
You have agency. You aren't just a victim of the world. You are a force for good in it. And that feeling, that is the antidote to despair.
But don't think any of this comes easily. We love to look at successful people and say, oh, they were just born with it. Einstein smashed that illusion when he said, genius is 1% talent and 99% hard work. We want the magic pill. We want to believe that greatness is a lottery ticket, because if it's just luck, then we have an excuse for not trying. We can say, well, I wasn't born a genius, and go back to sleep. But the truth is terrifying. The truth is that the difference between you and the greats isn't magic. It's sweat. It's the late nights. It's the refusal to give up when everyone else has gone home. It means you have no excuse. And while you are doing that work, you have to be careful about what you are chasing. We chase relationships. We chase status symbols. Einstein warned us, if you want to live a happy life, tie it to a goal, not to people or things. People change. They leave, they disappoint, things break, they rust, they lose their shine. If your happiness is tied to these anchors, you will be tossed around by every wave. You will never be stable. But a goal, a mission, that is yours. It comes from inside. It is a North Star that doesn't move, no matter what the weather does. When you live for a purpose, you are free from the fear of losing what you have. Yet, living this way is rare. Most people just follow the herd. Einstein observed this loneliness of the independent thinker. Few are those who see with their own eyes and feel with their own hearts. We are social creatures. We want to fit in. So we borrow our opinions from the news. We borrow our feelings from our friends. We see what we are told to see. We feel what we are expected to feel. We become copies. To see with your own eyes is an act of rebellion. It means looking at the naked truth, even when it's ugly. To feel with your own heart means risking pain, but it is the only way to be actually fully alive. And what is the point of being alive if it's just for yourself? Einstein brings us back to connection. Life isn't worth living unless it is lived for someone else. We are told to look out for number one, survive, accumulate, win. But you can win the whole world and still feel completely empty. A life that ends at your own skin is a very small life. The paradox is that we only find ourselves when we give ourselves away, whether it's for your children, your community, or a cause. Service isn't a burden. It is the weight that keeps us grounded to the earth. But be warned, the world is fickle. It loves you one day and hates you the next. Einstein knew this better than anyone, saying, if my theory of relativity is proven successful, Germany will claim me as a German, and France will declare me a citizen of the world. Should my theory prove untrue, France will say that I am a German, and Germany will declare that I am a Jew. He saw the absurdity of labels. People don't care about who you are. They care about what you represent to them. You are a hero when you succeed and a scapegoat when you fail. The labels change with the wind. So why bother trying to please them? Why base your identity on national pride or public opinion when it's all just a game of convenience? You have to know who you are, because the world will never make up its mind. This judgment applies to everyone, not just the famous. We judge people by narrow standards. Einstein gave us this famous analogy. Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. We have built a world of tree climbing contests. We test everyone the same way. We value one type of intelligence, one type of success, and millions of brilliant minds, artists, empathizers, dreamers, walk around thinking they are failures. It's a tragedy of wasted potential. Imagine the fish, spending its life staring at the trunk of a tree, feeling worthless, while ignoring the vast ocean behind it where it could reign supreme. We have to find our own water. Finally, we must remain humble. We must accept that we never fully arrive. Einstein, the man who changed science, reminded us, no amount of experimentation can ever prove me right. A single experiment can prove me wrong. That is the sound of true wisdom. It is the understanding that truth is fragile. You can be right for 1,000 years, and tomorrow, a single fact could shatter it all. And that is okay. It keeps us honest. It keeps us searching. We don't need to be right forever. We just need to be willing to look, to question, and to let the universe prove us wrong, because that is how we learn. That is how we grow. "700 years ago, a man sat in a fortress in North Africa and wrote down the code of human history. He wasn't just a historian, he was the father of sociology, economics, and political science, long before those terms even existed. Ibn Khaldun saw the rise and fall of civilizations not as random chaos, but as a heartbeat we could measure. And if you listen to what he found, you realize he wasn't writing about the past, he was writing about us. We often think the worst thing that can happen is losing a job, a relationship, or a battle. But Ibn Khaldun tells us that the real end isn't when the walls fall down, but when the spirit breaks. Throughout history, many nations have suffered a physical defeat, but that has never marked the end of a nation. But when a nation has become the victim of a psychological defeat, then that marks the end of a nation. You see, you can rebuild a city from ash. You can regain your wealth after bankruptcy. The physical world is pliable, it recovers, because stone and coin don't have feelings, they just exist. But once you believe you are beaten, that is the poison. When the mind accepts inferiority, when the collective spirit decides it is weak, the game is over. No amount of resources can save a person or a people who have already surrendered inside their own heads. And this cycle of rising and falling isn't new. It's actually terrifyingly predictable because human nature doesn't change. Ibn Khaldun reminds us that we are just echoing the people who came before us. The past resembles the future more than one drop of water resembles another. We like to think we are modern. We think our problems are unique, that our technology has changed the rules of the game. It hasn't. The tools change, the scenery changes, but the script remains exactly the same. Greed, power, fear, and tribe. These are the constants. Studying history isn't about memorizing dates of dead kings. It's about looking into a mirror. If you want to know what happens tomorrow, just look at what happened yesterday. So if the people remain the same, we need systems to manage them. We create laws and leaders to keep us safe. But Ibn Khaldun had a very cynical, very sharp view on the entity we call the state. Government is an institution which prevents injustice other than such as it commits itself. It's a paradox, isn't it? We build a monster to protect us from other monsters. We hand over a monopoly on violence to a few people and hope they use it to stop thieves and invaders. But eventually, the protector becomes the predator. The institution designed to stop injustice becomes the only thing powerful enough to commit injustice on a massive scale. And there is no one left to call for help. Now, this corruption doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. Ibn Khaldun actually put a timer on it, a countdown clock for greatness that ticks away with each passing family line. The term of life of a dynasty does not normally exceed 3 generations, for in the first generation are still preserved the characteristic features of rough, uncivilized rural life, such as hard conditions of life, courage, ferocity, and partnership in authority. Therefore, the strength of the asabiya is maintained. The first generation builds. They are hungry. They know what it means to sleep on the floor and fight for every scrap of bread. They have asabiya, social cohesion, because they have to rely on each other to survive. But then they win. They get comfortable. Their children grow up in palaces, not tents. By the time you get to the third generation, the grit is gone. They think luxury is a birthright, not a reward. And that softness is exactly when the wolf comes to the door. It makes you wonder then, are we just products of our bloodline? Is success genetic? Ibn Khaldun shakes his head and says no. Man is the child of customs, not the child of his ancestors. We aren't defined by who our grandfather was. We are defined by what we do every single day. If you take a warrior's son and raise him in silk sheets, he becomes soft. If you take a king's son and throw him in the desert, he becomes hard. Environment is everything. Habit is everything. You can't rely on your lineage to save you. You are molded by your surroundings, your routines, and the struggles you choose to accept or avoid. And finally, there's the sign that the end is near. When a society is about to collapse, you can see it in the money. Ibn Khaldun pointed to the tax collector as the grim reaper of civilizations. At the beginning of a dynasty, taxation yields a large revenue from small assessments. At the end of the dynasty, taxation yields a small revenue from large assessments. When things are good, taxes are low, so people work hard. They keep what they earn, businesses grow, and the treasury fills up naturally. It's a virtuous cycle of hope and growth. But when the rulers get greedy and the bureaucracy gets bloated, they hike the rates. They try to squeeze every drop from the stone. People stop working, hope dies, and the economy grinds to a halt. It is the final gasp before the silence. Most of us hear the name Pythagoras and just think of triangles, high school math class, but that misses the point entirely. He wasn't just a mathematician, he was a mystic, a leader of a secret school in ancient Greece who was obsessed with purifying the human soul. We live in a world that is loud, reactive, and shallow. We need his quiet, ancient strictness now more than ever, because he knew exactly how to navigate the chaos. You know that heat that rises up your neck when someone insults you? That split second where you want to burn the whole house down just to prove you're right? Pythagoras saw the destruction in that moment and gave a strict command. He said, "In anger, we should refrain both from speech and action." It's about the damage that can't be undone. When you speak in rage, you aren't speaking the truth. You're speaking your pain, and you're aiming it like a weapon at the people you usually love the most. Once those words leave your mouth, they take on a life of their own, and no amount of apologies can ever fully pull them back.
So the only move is to do nothing, freeze. It feels like weakness, standing there taking it, but it's actually the ultimate strength because you are refusing to let a temporary emotion destroy a permanent bond. You wait until the storm passes, and only then, when the sky is clear, do you decide what needs to be said. But it's not just about controlling our temper. It's about how carelessly we agree to things. We throw around our agreement like it costs nothing. We nod our heads just to keep the peace or avoid an awkward pause. Pythagoras understood that our integrity lives in the smallest choices, noting that the oldest, shortest words, yes and no, are those which require the most thought. A yes is a piece of your life given away. When you say it without thinking, you're signing a contract you haven't read, giving away your time and energy to things that don't actually matter to you. Then you end up resentful, tired, and spread thin, all because you were too afraid to pause and really weigh the cost. And no? No is terrifying because it risks rejection, but it's also the word that protects your soul. If you can't say no to the world, you can never say yes to yourself. We have to treat these tiny, ancient words with the heaviness they deserve, instead of tossing them out like loose change. And really, if we fix how we speak, we eventually change how we are seen by the world. Look around. Everyone is shouting, trying to be the smartest person in the room. Pythagoras looked at this wall of noise and made a distinction that cuts right through the ego. He observed, "A fool is known by his speech, and a wise man by silence." There's this desperate need to prove we exist by making noise. The fool talks because he has to say something. He's terrified that if he stops speaking, he'll disappear or look stupid. He reveals all his cards, all his insecurities, spilling everything out just to fill the void.
But the wise man, he talks because he has something to say. He's comfortable in the quiet because he knows his worth isn't tied to the volume of his voice. Silence isn't empty, it's full of answers. When you stop trying to impress, you finally start to understand.
You know, we usually see him as a marble giant, sitting frozen in a chair in Washington. But Abraham Lincoln was a man who knew darkness better than almost anyone. He buried children. He presided over a slaughter of brothers. He fought a mind that constantly wanted to pull him under. And yet, he didn't just survive that darkness. He forged a kind of quiet, unbreakable wisdom in the fires of it. That's why we need him right now, not because he was a president, but because he knew how to endure when the world was falling apart. We spend so much of our lives holding on to grudges, don't we? We think the only way to win is to watch the people who hurt us suffer. But look at how Abraham Lincoln redefined the very idea of victory when he asked this: "Do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends?"
Think about the raw power of that. You aren't just stopping the fight, you're dismantling the very reason the fight exists. It's not about being soft, it's about the ultimate strategic elimination of a threat by turning it into an ally. And it's a heavy thing to do, dropping your shield like that. But when you turn animosity into alliance, you don't just survive the conflict, you evolve past it. But then you have to wonder about the people who refuse to change, the ones who wear masks. We live in a world of curated lives and half-truths, where it feels like everyone is getting away with something. Lincoln saw right through that short-term game when he said, "You can fool some of the people all of the time, and all of the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all of the time."
The truth has this stubborn way of clawing its way to the surface, no matter how deep you bury it. You might manage to craft a perfect illusion for a year, maybe 10, but eventually the cracks show. The energy it takes to maintain a lie is exhausting, and it's a debt you eventually have to pay. So living authentically isn't just moral, it's practical. It is the only way to actually rest. When you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear from the passage of time. Speaking of time, we are always rushing, aren't we? We want the success, the accolade, the finished product right now. But Lincoln, a man who had to wait for everything, understood the architecture of patience. Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. Most of us are hacking away with dull blades, sweating, exhausting ourselves, and wondering why we aren't making a dent. We mistake movement for progress, but the real work, the silent work, happens before you ever take a swing. It's about preparation in the shadows. It's about building the capacity to handle the task so that when you finally strike, the obstacle just gives way. The sharpening isn't a delay. It is the most critical part of the act. And once you're ready, you can't just sit around waiting for destiny to knock on your door. We get paralyzed by the future, scared of what's coming, as if it's a storm we can't control. Abraham Lincoln didn't wait for fate to tell him who he was. He said, "The best way to predict your future is to create it." There is this terrifying freedom in realizing that you are the architect. You don't have to read the tea leaves, you just have to lay the bricks. If you want a different life, you don't hope for it, you build it, hour by hour. It removes the anxiety of the unknown, because the future isn't something that happens to you, it's something that comes out of you. It is a direct result of your own hands. Now, where do you get the tools to build that future? Lincoln was born into nothing. No school, no status, dirt floors. Yet he rose to the highest office. He honored the source of his power when he admitted, "All I have learned, I learned from books." He understood that a book is a mind meld with the greatest thinkers who ever lived.
You can sit in a log cabin in the middle of nowhere and have a conversation with Shakespeare or the Greeks. It is the ultimate equalizer. It means your circumstances don't define your intelligence. You can bypass your limitations, your geography, even your era, just by opening a page. It is how you transcend the life you were born into. But even with all that knowledge, character is the final test. We all get mad. We all lose our cool. But Lincoln gave us a way to measure the size of a human being with this observation. You can tell the greatness of a man by what makes him angry. If you lose your mind over a traffic jam or a rude comment, it shows the scale of your soul is small. Small things disturb small minds. But great people, they save their fire for the things that actually matter: injustice, cruelty, the suffering of others. It's a mirror. Look at what makes you rage. If it's petty, you're playing small. But if your anger is reserved for the brokenness of the world, then you know you're walking a higher path.
We often forget that before he was a legend, Confucius was a man wandering through a broken world. He lived in a time of chaotic warfare, watching empires crumble and neighbors turn on each other, desperate to find a way to glue society back together. He wasn't just teaching etiquette, he was trying to save the human soul from its own darkness. His wisdom isn't just ancient history, it's a survival guide for the times when we feel most lost, most angry, or most alone. You know, we spend our whole lives trying to figure out how to live better, how to be better. Confucius broke it down into a simple, painful truth about how we actually grow. By 3 methods we may learn wisdom. First, by reflection, which is noblest. Second, by imitation, which is easiest. And third, by experience, which is the bitterest.
Reflection is noble because it's lonely. It requires you to sit with your own thoughts and stare into the abyss of your own mistakes until you find a light. It is the path of the sage, asking the hard questions when no one else is watching, and it's the only way to own your truth completely. But most of us, we don't choose that path. We wait until life forces our hand, until we crash and burn. And that's the bitter taste of experience. We learn the stove is hot only after we've burned our hands, carrying the scars as a permanent reminder of the lesson we refuse to learn in silence. And speaking of scars, there is that burning desire we all get when we've been wronged, that itch to make someone else hurt like we do. But listen to the warning Confucius gives us about the cost of holding on to that grudge. Before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves. It's such a dark image, isn't it? Because the moment you decide to destroy someone else, you have to kill a part of yourself just to do it. You have to smother your empathy, your kindness, and your peace, effectively ending the person you used to be just to settle a score. The second grave is for you, not physically, but spiritually. You think you're the hunter, but revenge makes you the prey of your own hatred, eating you alive from the inside out until there is nothing left but the hollow shell of your anger. So we have to be willing to let go, to adapt, and to shift our perspectives. Confucius noticed something fascinating about the people who refuse to shift their ground. Only the wisest and stupidest of men never change. The wise man doesn't change because he has found the truth. He has anchored himself in something eternal and has no need to drift. He is steady, like a mountain, grounded in a reality that the rest of us are still scrambling to understand. But the fool, he doesn't change because he has walled himself in with his own ego, refusing to look at the evidence or listen to reason. Everyone else, you, me, the people trying to survive, we are in the middle, constantly changing, constantly failing and learning, trying to move from the foolishness of stubbornness to the stillness of wisdom. But wisdom isn't just about what's inside your head. It's about how you live in the world, specifically a corrupt one. Confucius challenges our definition of success with this piercing observation.
To be wealthy and honored in an unjust society is a disgrace. Think about what it takes to get to the top when the ladder is rotten. If the system is built on lies and exploitation, and you are sitting comfortably at the summit, it means you played the game better than anyone else. It means you sold a piece of your soul to fit into a mold that was never meant to hold a human being. Real honor in that kind of world looks like failure to the naked eye. It looks like walking away from the money, refusing the applause, and standing in the cold because you refuse to warm yourself by a fire fueled by other people's suffering. And he takes this idea even further, looking at the relationship between the state and the soul. Confucius paints a stark contrast between two very different worlds. In a country well governed, poverty is something to be ashamed of. In a country badly governed, wealth is something to be ashamed of. If the playing field is level, if the laws are just and the leaders are good, then falling behind is on you. It means you didn't step up, you didn't contribute, and that poverty is a reflection of your own lack of effort in a land of opportunity. But when the game is rigged, when the laws are twisted to serve the few, then your wealth is evidence. It is proof that you benefited from the misery of others, that you thrived while the garden withered, and that is a shame deeper than having empty pockets. Now, let's move away from society and look at the power of your own mind. Confucius understood the psychology of belief long before modern science caught up. The man who says he can and the man who says he cannot are both correct. It sounds like a riddle, but it's just the mechanics of the human will. If you believe you can't, you stop looking for the solution, you stop pushing against the resistance, and you guarantee your own failure before you even start. But if you say you can, you don't magically get the skill, but you open the door to possibility. You force your brain to find a way, to hack through the jungle, making the statement true simply by refusing to accept the alternative. Finally, there's this beautiful, almost strange thought about power and grace. Confucius leaves us with a metaphor that changes how we see leadership. Never give a sword to a man who can't dance. It's not really about dancing, it's about rhythm, about empathy, about understanding the flow of life. If a man has no grace, no appreciation for beauty or art, he is just a brute, and putting power in his hands is dangerous because he doesn't know how to wield it with restraint. You need that balance. You need the softness to understand the hardness, the ability to move with the music of the world, so that when you do have to strike or lead or cut, you do it with precision and necessity, not just clumsy violence.